when I got up, I said to my wife, it's a holiday in South Africa today, like we normally do when we talk about, stuff back home. And she said, oh yeah, it's June 16th, and so, that was about it. And we went off to work and so on. And interestingly enough, after I got Dr. Morgan's email and I agreed to do the talk, I had to rush off to another meeting. And the associate dean was trying to schedule a meeting for the 1st of July. And the dean said, oh, people are not going to come. And I said, why wouldn't they? And he said, oh, it's a long weekend. And I said, is it a holiday around that time? And he said, yeah, it's July 4th. I said, July 4th. Oh, yeah, that's Independence Day, right? And he said, you didn't know that? And I said, yeah, I did, but I kind of remember the South African holidays better than I do the American ones, I'm sorry. And he said, no, that's strange, because I've been here for 15 years, and I've got U.S. citizenship, and I always claim to be one of the very, very, very few African Americans on campus. Because I actually have an African passport and I have a American passport. So I much prefer the term black rather than African American, because black is all inclusive of who we are as people. So one of the things that, when Dr. Morgan asked me to talk, I normally write talks and do presentations and things like that. And she asked me, do I know of a South African student? And I do know of one, and I did say that to her. It's my daughter. And she's unfortunately at the C Lab, or I'd have her talk to you guys. But then she came, it was 15 years ago, so she came here and she was still little, so she doesn't remember. In fact, she wasn't born in 76. I was a young man back then. So let me tell you about the importance of Soweto. So do you guys know what Soweto, or what it is, or what is the reference? Yes.
I just know that from what I've heard about it before, it was a really bad day when there was a lot of protesters who wanted to change the main language in the schools, in like the black schools, and just turned out to be just people throwing stuff at the police. That's all I know.
So it's June 16, 1976. We've had the struggle against apartheid for a long time. But June 16, 1976 was the day, in my opinion, and millions of South Africans, the day, it's the day the struggle pivoted in South Africa. It is a very unfortunate day in South African history, but I think we brought attention of the world to the injustices that was going on in South Africa. So during my presentation about Nelson Mandela, I did have one of the slides, and being short on time, I couldn't do another presentation or get you some pictures. But I don't know if you can see this. But this is a picture that changed Africa, changed South Africa, changed Africa, in my opinion, changed the world. The king is a 12-year-old boy named Hector Peterson. So if you look here, it's a 12-year-old boy named Hector Peterson being carried by an 18-year-old, and that's his sister, Antoinette Peterson, that's crying and running, and what they're doing is running away from the police. So few minutes or some time before that, you're right, what happened in the black townships in South Africa, or the government decided they're going to institute Afrikaans as the medium of teaching. So as school children, we had to learn Afrikaans, and we, as a subject. So most of you guys, if you studied in the U.S., you took Spanish, right? What, I don't know, 8th grade or 9th grade? I think you're the only native Birmingham. Are you from Birmingham?
Montgomery. Montgomery.
Well, close enough.
I'm from Nigeria.
You're from Nigeria and you're from Nigeria, so you didn't have to take Spanish, but you guys had to take Spanish in school. So imagine now if we came and said to you, well, we don't want you to take Spanish anymore. We're going to teach your entire curriculum in Spanish. Like, suddenly. That's a big change, right? Firstly, we didn't want to do Afrikaans. We didn't want to learn Afrikaans. We called it the language of the oppressor, because that's what the Afrikaners spoke. Those were the architects of apartheid. So we didn't want to learn the subject at all, but they forced us to learn it. You could not graduate school without learning Afrikaans. It was, you could fail math, you could fail biology, history, name it, it's okay, but you can't fail Afrikaans, right? So now they wanted to teach the entire curriculum in Afrikaans, which meant they wanted us to learn Afrikaans. But it was one more thing that we had to endure, in the humiliation that we had to endure. So students were protesting about this, especially the university students and so on. Big protest. And there was a big meeting that was being held in one of the stadiums in Soweto. And the school children heard about this. And they decided they're going to leave the schools. This is the grade school kids going to leave the schools, and they're going to march and go and join the protest in the stadium. The police stopped them. They stopped them, and it was not just like police in riot gear or something. They had what we call Caspers. So think about tanks rolling out into the street to stop the school children. But the school children wanted to continue marching. And they fired tear gas, and obviously when they fired tear gas, they started dispersing and running, and then they started shooting the school children. And these are grade school children, not even all high school kids. So Hector Peterson, unfortunately, was one of the kids who was shot. And he was shot, and Umisa Mbayu was the kid, 18 years old, who picked him up and ran off. And his sister Antoinette was running, crying, running with him. And a black South African reporter took that picture that I showed you. And that was published all around the world. And that showed the brutality that existed at the time. So, you may say, well, it was one incident, but it was an incident that really sparked a new wave of protest. And so, fortunately for us in South Africa, we had censorship of the press. This photograph leaked out and everything else, and it became the symbol at the time by which we rallied as such. So then the dynamics changed. It was not just the elders, people like Nelson Mandela and everybody else who were fighting, and Nelson Mandela was in prison at the time, but the name personifies the struggle. So what changed was, even in high schools and in elementary schools, we started coming out and protesting. And that changed the dynamic in South Africa. And that led to a sustained effort of protest and struggle against apartheid. Unfortunately for us, the brutality just got worse. It just, they just came down harder, and they clamped down more, and the violence was worse. But at least now we had the eyes of the world watching as to what was going on in South Africa. So that's the significance of